NFL free agency has begun and money has been flying all over the place. We are also in the stretch run of the National Hockey League season. To help break it all down with me is NorthStar Bets' very own Steven Psihogios. Stevie, we've been on an NHL heater of late, talking all things hockey, but we're both football guys here too. So let's talk about NFL free agency and some early thoughts you have so far. Of course, the Philadelphia Eagles make a big splash getting Saquon Barkley. The Chargers are cutting everybody. The Ravens are losing players. My Seahawks are spending no money whatsoever. Brian Burns is now with the New York Giants. What were some of your early takeaways so far in the first couple of days of free agency starting?
Well, I'll be honest. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the Green Bay Packers have emerged as legit players in
Mhm.
the NFC, not just the NFC North, in the NFC. The thing about the NFL is your window is usually shorter than you think it is. And
Mhm.
that's how I'm kind of looking at a team like the Detroit Lions. Sure, they had a nice run. They probably should have ended up in the Super Bowl last year, but it didn't happen. And it's not every year that everything is going to line up perfectly. We saw this Green Bay team get very hot down the stretch. They went into Dallas and punched the Cowboys right in the teeth. Then they probably should have beat the 49ers, very similarly to how the Lions should have beat the 49ers. And this is a team clearly ascending. I really like the addition of Josh Jacobs in the backfield. I think this team added to a skill group that is young and very talented as it is. You look at the team as a whole, they didn't have Aaron Jones for a lot of last season. He missed
Mhm.
some pretty significant time in and out of the lineup with injuries. And when he was able to get going in the playoffs, that's when they were most effective. You bring in a younger body in Josh Jacobs, who can, we've seen, handle that offensive workload and a big tote, a big number of carries. And I just think this is a team now that looks very dynamic offensively. They'll add to their defense and the offensive line during the draft, but they're on the come up. And they're a team right now, if I'm looking to bet on North Star Bets on the NFC North at plus 220, that is a wager I'm looking to make.
I can't. I agree with you 1000%. Look, the way the Packers ended the season last year, kind of at Thanksgiving, where they went into Detroit and Jordan Love started finding his game. He started playing like an elite quarterback, and I think he's only going to get better going into his second full season being the starting quarterback. Look, Romeo Dobbs has proven he can be an elite wide receiver. I believe Christian Watson has the skill set and the tools to be an elite wide receiver. He's just got to stay healthy. Jalen Reed, they got young tight ends. Now you add a guy in Josh Jacobs who led the NFL in rushing just a couple of years ago, who's a guy who can be a bell cow running back in that Matt LaFleur system. I believe the Packers, like you mentioned, I don't know how they keep on doing it. They go from Favre to Rodgers, and now it looks like they have a guy in Jordan Love who can carry the torch on for the next 10 to 15 seasons. I do believe that the Packers are going to be kind of like last year's Detroit Lions, where they're kind of the darlings of the offseason. Everybody's be buying stock into them, and they're going to have pressure on them. Let's see how they handle that pressure. But Matt LaFleur has been a coach who has dealt with the expectations. I think Jordan Love has what it takes to be um, the guy. So I do agree with you. I think the Packers are a very smart bet going forward in the NFC. Let's stay in the North though, because I want to touch on this about Justin Fields. He's been a big topic of discussion kind of ever since the Bears were anointed the number one overall pick, because now it seems like they're gonna trade him and they're gonna take Caleb Williams, which I believe is the smart thing to do, considering the fact that Fields is gonna need a new deal, but not really any buyers for Justin Fields. Is this a situation where the Bears just wait till the draft, where a team like Seattle or a Denver or a Vegas don't get the quarterback they want in the draft per se, and then have to have their backup plan in getting Justin Fields?
Yeah, and I think that's the smartest course of action if you're the
Mhm.
Bears is to wait it out because you don't want to rush right now and then be kicking yourself when potentially there's more buyers in the market later. Because we've seen this happen time and time again in the NFL draft. Oh, the quarterbacks, this guy's a mid-round quarterback. This is a mid to late first round quarterback.
Mhm.
The next thing you know, you get to draft day and he's being pushed up inside the top 10. You could see that happen with a number of guys, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, Bo Nix. Those are some players who right now, sure, they're not in that upper echelon or going in that first half of the first round by a lot of projections. But you get the draft night, and if you're looking for a quarterback, you don't want to be left there with nothing. And there's a lot of teams that could face that fear, right? You've mentioned some of them:
Mhm.
Denver, Minnesota. The list goes on and on. The Raiders. There's a lot of teams that could end up not having a quarterback. And also, you could get other teams are negotiating right now with players. A team I'm looking at, the Miami Dolphins. I'm sure they're trying to get Tua Tagovailoa signed to an extension. But
Mhm.
let's say things don't work out with Tua, and that's a guy who I could see there being some significant contract discrepancies. I mean, he's going to come to them and say, "Look, I led the NFL in passing yards last year," but they're going to come to him and say, "Well, durability has been a problem." I could see there being a chasm in between what the Dolphins are offering and what Tua is expecting. Maybe you get some teams like that who all of a sudden are now in the market, maybe
Mhm.
looking at a guy like Justin Fields. So for them, I think the Bears are doing the right thing right now, which is waiting. The only downside, sometimes you get some media pressure as well if you go into the draft with Fields and still holding that number one overall pick. Caleb Williams, a temperamental guy, he might not like knowing that there's a starter waiting still there in Chicago.
Okay, last thing with the NFL, there were the three biggest names I would say that most people know that were moved, that changed homes during free agency, were Kirk Cousins going to the Atlanta Falcons, Saquon Barkley going to the Philadelphia Eagles, and Derrick Henry going to the Baltimore Ravens. So the Baltimore Ravens are plus 110 to win their division, the AFC North. The Atlanta Falcons are the favorites at plus 100 to win the NFC South. And the Philadelphia Eagles are second behind the Cowboys, who have done nothing during free agency at plus 125 according to NorthStar Bets. Which of those three players and teams do you think A is going to have the biggest impact on their new team and B have the best shot of winning their division?
I'm going with the Eagles at plus 125. This really just seemed like a team that lost it over the second half. And I'm going to buy more of what I've seen based on the larger sample size. This team is now 1 year removed from making it to a Super Bowl. Uh, Apparently, like this Dom guy, this big Dom guy, as soon as
Big
they
dog.
moved him off the sidelines, the whole season crumbled. But you hear guys talk about him, like you heard Jason Kelsey in his retirement speech mention Big Dom.
Mhm.
Fletcher Cox has mentioned Big Dom as being a big part of this Eagles culture. Maybe there was something to him being moved from the sidelines that really actually did affect this team. Apparently, he's in charge of like making sure that Sirianni stays in check, and we saw his emotions go all over the place over the second half of the season. So I think actually, Big Dom, maybe adding him, but more serious note, you add a guy like Saquon Barkley to that offense, and it just becomes
Mhm.
an elite rushing attack with Jalen Hurts also at the helm. They've got the weapons in the receiving game too, AJ Brown, and you've got Devontae Smith on the other side, Dallas Goddard at tight end. And then you also look at the Cowboys and what they've done. Dallas hasn't done anything this offseason. This has been an uncharacteristically quiet offseason from the Cowboys. Maybe they go and they make a splash at the draft, but they really don't have anybody at running back right now, which
Deuce Vaughn.
is not the biggest issue, but it's a concern.
You go from Tony Pollard to Deuce Vaughn. It's a bit of a drop off there. I'm with you. I
Yeah.
think the Eagles do win the NFC East. I believe that the reports everybody's saying that Jalen Hurts got a bit too caught up on the off the field stuff about the endorsements and this, that, and there. I think he's a guy that's very disciplined. You saw what he could do. He had an amazing showing at the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think he can still be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, probably if not one B, one A, one B compared to the Bengals for best duo, wide receiver duo in the NFL. And you add a guy like Saquon Barkley, who's never really played behind a good offensive line in New York. Now gets to play against behind one, excuse me, in Philadelphia. He's gonna feast there. I think Kirk Cousins does elevate the Falcons to win that division, but then again, you're playing in the South. I think Baker and company last year in Tampa was a very good story, but can they follow it up next season? I don't know. And then when it comes to Derrick Henry in Baltimore, which I think is a good fit, a great fit, I just think Derrick Henry is kind of over the hill now. I think he's kind of washed up a bit. And Baltimore's losing a whole bunch of people. They've lost pretty much, they lost Patrick Queen, Geno Stone. They're cutting Tyus Bowser. A lot of the guys they have, they've lost, right? So it's going to be interesting in Baltimore. And plus, that division is probably the hardest in football. But I'm with you. I think the Eagles have done enough. They picked up CJ Gardner Johnson back, which helps with the safety. I think they're still in on Justin Simmons as well. So I believe the Eagles know that, look, last year we've kind of wet the bed at the end of the season. The pressure's on Sirianni, the pressure's on Roseman. I believe the Eagles will once again be the class of the NFC East.
One thing also, you mentioned it, I found a little odd regarding Derrick Henry was how quick the Titans were to go sign Tony Pollard.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure if they wanted to, they could have brought Henry back. The deals aren't that far apart from what
Mhm.
Henry got. He's only got really like 1 year of guaranteed money. If they wanted to bring him back, they could have, and they chose to move on from him. And they know him better than any other team does,
Yeah.
right? He's in that building every day. I found that a little strange that the Titans were willing to move on from Henry so quickly.
Yeah, look, I think it was time for just a change. I guess Derrick Henry kind of voiced his opinion at the end of the season where he wants to play somewhere where he can win. And I think the Titans are going on a full on rebuild. Teams that are not going on a full on rebuild are teams like the Florida Panthers, the Dallas Stars, the New York Rangers, and the Carolina Hurricanes. All four teams were in action last night, playing one another in a playoff like atmosphere. I felt in both the games. The Rangers were up 1 nothing yesterday against the Hurricanes. And then the Panthers go and beat the Stars 4-3. Looking at all of those games there, Steven, out of those four teams, I find it very interesting. Who do you think out of those four teams would be the best shot of winning the cup? I know Florida's the odds-on favorite, but is there another team behind them that really is a shot of doing some serious damage come playoff time?
Yeah, and I think it's within the conference. I think we're overlooking the New York Rangers. I just because they were quiet at the deadline, I really actually liked what they did, adding a guy like Alex Wenberg, who just solidifies their depth down the middle of the ice. He's just a versatile center that you can kind of plug in at number 2 and number 3. You probably don't want to play number 4. He's too talented to play number 4, but you
Mm.
could put him in any of those middle 6 center spots and be fine. He provides a little bit of offensive upside, but he's solid in his own zone. And the Rangers, they proved it last night. I mean, you take this Carolina team that's been scoring a lot recently. Their offense is up this year. They add Jake Gensel at the deadline. Didn't matter. They kept them off the board. Igor, back-to-back shutouts. This team is very good. They are very good. I think the Florida Panthers right now, the way they're playing, and I mean, you're only going to add fuel to the fire with their comeback win last night. They go down 3-0 and they take the win in regulation against Dallas, and they've only lost one road game since Christmas, which is a really bizarre,
Mhm.
crazy run they've been on Florida. But hey, I'm gonna say it. I still think the Rangers are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. I think they are better than the Florida Panthers defensively. I'd rather, looking at it
Ooh.
1 through 6, I'd rather have New York's defense. I'd rather have their goaltending, and I think the Rangers, they have enough offensively to win a series against
Wow.
Florida.
Well, you think the New York Rangers have a better shot than the Florida Panthers. Right now in NorthStar Bets, the Panthers are plus 275 to win the East, while the Rangers are plus 400. I I do agree on the goaltending aspect. I think the Panthers are deeper up front than the Rangers. I do like guys like Truba, Keandre Miller, Schneider. I like the Rangers back end pieces. I just the way that Florida plays, that style of play that they have, and the way Paul Maurice in the playoffs is just such a great coach. I like the Panthers, but I'm gonna go with the Dallas Stars. I think the Dallas Stars, you've kind of made me a big time believer in them, surprisingly. They have everything you need to do to be successful. They have scoring, they have depth, they have defense, they have goaltending, they have playoff experience, they have a good head coach in Peter DeBoer. I think the Dallas Stars are in the Western Conference, at least they're top two, top three team to potentially come out of the West. I am buying the Dallas Stars stock there. And if I know I'm a Canucks fan, I hope as hell we don't have to play against them in the Western Conference final because a guy like Jake Oninger scares the living daylights out of me. And, having a sniper like Jason Robertson, Joe Pavelski just elevates his game every single time he's in the playoffs. Um, and they're a team that, again, they just have been there. They were in the cup final, back in the bubble. They've been on deep playoff runs. They're going to be a tough out to anybody that faces them.
Yeah, and like I said, my best bet right now, I would still pick Dallas. If you're going value wise, you get a little longer odds with the Rangers to win the cup. The last time I checked, they're plus 1150 over on North Star Bet. So I like getting a little extra value. Dallas really shot up after the Chris Tanev trade and with the
Mhm.
way they've been playing lately. And I still look, if I'm going to pick one team to win the cup, I'll still say Dallas. But I think value-wise, I'm going to go with the Rangers. If I'm
Yeah.
looking to find something outside of 10-1, a little bit higher than that. But I wouldn't complain seeing those two teams go out in the Stanley Cup final. I think that'd be a great series. And, I'm biased. I got bets on both to win the Stanley Cup. So obviously I'm going to like seeing those two go off in the final. But it was good. It was good to see those four teams kind of go toe to toe last night. You
Yeah.
got some really good matchups in the NHL. And another good one coming up tonight, Justin.
Tonight, yes, the number one seed in the Pacific Division, 10 points up on the Edmonton Oilers. The Vancouver Canucks are taking on the team who's third in the Central, the Colorado Avalanche, but that Central is locked on tonight in Vancouver. No Thatcher Demko for the Canucks. Casey DeSmith takes the net. I hope we don't see Demko till like the last week of the season where you can just get ready for the playoffs. But Stevie, what are some of your best bets for tonight's big tilt between the Avs and my Canucks?
Well, they're all kind of connected. You've got
Okay.
Colorado playing its second game in as many nights. No backup goalie, or sorry, no starting goalie for the Vancouver Canucks. You got Casey DeSmith starting, and he's been a little shaky lately. He was a little better early on in the season, hasn't been so hot as of late. So I like the over 6.5 goals. I think you see quite a bit of offense in that game tonight, which leads me to a pair of player props. You see, like I said, this
Ooh.
is all connected. Jonathan Drouin to score points at plus 100. He's been solid this year. He's carved out a role for himself inside the top six and on that top power play unit. Additionally, I like Elias Pettersson, your guy, Elias Pettersson, to score 2+ points at
Ooh.
plus 225. He did it against the Winnipeg Jets on Saturday. He's having a very good season. And these are the type of games, these high scoring back and forth games where you're going to give your star players a lot of run, where you see guys like Pettersson have a big night. So I'll take him to score a couple points on the Avalanche.
Well, for me tonight, I don't know. I'm gonna bet the Canucks game because I'm gonna be watching with my heart invested in it. But I got the Winnipeg Jets on the money line, parlayed that with the Los Angeles Kings beating the St. Louis Blues. Look, I think that's gonna be an interesting game to the Jets and the Preds. I think with the Jets playing at home and playing a little bit better than they play on the weekend, I think they get the job done against Nashville. I think the Kings are going to beat up on the St. Louis Blues, a team that's kind of fallen out of the playoff race at all. You can parlay those at NorthStar Bets at plus 177. Stevie, we thank you. We'll probably talk again next week. Probably talk some more NFL news and some more NHL playoff hype.
I look forward to it, Justin. Thanks for having me.